Okay, can everyone see this picture? Okay, Bev, thanks. I can see Bev on my side screen here. So here I am at age 16, and I am a melancholy, misfit mystic, a high school dropout now and again. Sometimes I go back to school and then drop out again. I was anti-establishment. I was a wandering wanderer. I wondered, what is life all about? You can see that in my face there. What is life all about? What is this? What am I supposed to do? I had already run away from home once in this picture, and I would run away again in search of what I thought was missing. I actually always came back home because I didn't find it out there. Out there, you know, a hippie chick out there hitchhiking down the highway looking for what I thought was missing from my life. Beautiful people, where are they? Where are my people, my kindred spirits? Anyway, I would come back home, and I had one object here that I want to show you. When I was 16, maybe even got it when I was 14 or 15. So it's the Buddha, but it's an incense burner, which was popular in those days, right? Very popular to have your incense. You put it right there and light it, and then it goes up through the Buddha's top. Right there, there's a hole. Can everybody see that Buddha? So I had my own Buddha. I didn't have Buddha's teachings, but I had this, and I have it still all these many years later. And there was one person I felt a kindred spiritship. I saw her on Dick Cavett show and other TV shows, probably Ed Sullivan, I can't remember. She was on TV, Janis Joplin. I love Janis Joplin. Oh my gosh, here she is. I have all of my old records, Janis Joplin. I wanted to meet her. I wanted to be her. I wanted to be able to express my truth the way she did. And she had this story that she would tell on Dick Cavett. She told how she felt like this terrible misfit in Port Arthur, Texas, and they ran her out of town because she wasn't their kind. I really identified with that. That was pretty juicy stuff. And I'd listen to her music, Ball and Chain, right? Summertime. So many pieces that she did like nobody else ever did. So I had that at least. I had Janis Joplin. She was my guiding light. But early October 1970, maybe some of you remember this. What happened then? I was sitting at the kitchen table, I remember clearly. I think I was going to go to school that day, high school, and I was sitting there at the kitchen table getting ready to go when my mother dropped the newspaper in front of me, and she said, there's your idol. And I looked at the paper. Janis Joplin had died. I couldn't face Janis Joplin dying. I just could not face it. 16 years old, sitting there, and I watched my mind. I had awareness already. I watched my mind decide it's not true. Janis Joplin did not die. I saw myself make up a story. She didn't die. She went underground. She got tired of the limelight, everybody after all the time, and she just decided to check out of this whole thing and go underground. And I would even tell people that, you know, somebody brings it up, Janis Joplin died. Oh, no, she didn't. You guys, you're fooled. You're fooled. She's still alive. She went underground. She's just hiding out from us, which I was doing. I was hiding out. Can you identify with this story at all? You hear something, you just can't face it and embrace it, and the mind comes to your rescue. I saw my mind do this, make up this story. Then I don't have to accept that she's dead. But drug overdose, no. But then, you know, this went on for a few years, my denying that Janis Joplin had died. I even fantasized that I saw her once in a parking lot. That's her in that car over there. I see her. That's her. And she looked at me. I know that's her. Sometimes I'd meet other people who'd say, yeah, that's right. She's not dead. She's underground. Then we'd have a group of us who believe it was our own conspiracy. And I stuck to it. But somewhere along the line, the story wore off. And I began to see I made up a story and I believed in it. My Buddha resurfaced. And I sat down, I opened my Buddha. See, it has this base. I opened the Buddha, and inside the Buddha, you see that in there, Nirja? Can you see that? There's a little piece of paper in there. My 16-year-old self put this piece of paper inside the Buddha. It reads, Janis Joplin, victim of heroin overdose. This is what I couldn't face. So I stashed it inside the Buddha where I knew it was safe. Rock blues singer Janis Joplin died accidentally of an overdose of heroin, according to the county coroner's office. Miss Joplin, 27 years old, was found dead in a Hollywood motel room on October 4th, 1970. There were needle marks on the inside of her left forearm. I tell you what, it makes me tear up even now. And I keep it there. I keep it there inside the Buddha. Where else should it be? It's a good place for it. Inventing a story like that and then realizing it helps you understand how that happens for people. Maybe your team doesn't win. And you say, it's not that our team lost, it's that they cheated. They cheated. Therefore, we didn't lose. Maybe you can understand. You've seen that happen in our modern day, right? Just can't face it, and the mind comes to your rescue and helps you come up with a good conspiracy. Or if you have some people, you can all agree on that together. But how is this not facing? How is this not embracing a spiritual subject? Am I just talking about psychology? Well, from my practices in Buddhism with Ruth Denison, I learned about the 5 hindrances. And I've been asking my writing workshop people, please draw me a diagram of a pinball machine, but nobody has done it. I want this picture of the front of a pinball machine. And inside of our old-fashioned pinball machine with flippers, inside are 5 posts. These are the Buddha's 5 hindrances. And what Ruth Denison told me is that the untrained mind will ping pong, or the ball will ping off of these posts, these 5 posts continuously. The first hindrance is worry and agitation, also known as restlessness, worry and agitation. The second one is sloth and torpor. Oh, please, I just want to sleep. Inertia. 3, ill will, which includes anger, bitterness, resentment, jealousy, doubt. I doubt everything. I doubt you. I doubt the world. I doubt myself. And 5, desire, sense desire. But what Ruth would tell me is that the desire for things to be different than they are is the root cause of suffering. Oh my goodness, that really struck me when I first heard her say that. I wanted things to be different than they were when I was 16 years old, so I decided not to face Janis Joplin's death, but rather to believe she hadn't died at all. Okay? Wanting things to be different than they are. So in the writing workshops, we've been working on subjects related to this, and we have 2 groups going right now. And I decided to break this topic into 3. So wanting things to be different than they are into 3 categories. Number 1, I want the world to be different than it is. I want you to be different than you are. And I want me to be different than I am. I want everything to be different than it is. Therefore, I can't accept anything really arising in consciousness. So let me first focus on the first one. I want the world to be different than it is. Not only do I not want any war on the planet, no war. I don't want any illness. I don't want old age. I don't want sickness, please. No brain tumors for children. No childhood cancer, no cancer for anybody. I don't want any death at all. No death. In fact, no impermanence, please. I don't want any impermanence. You can see maybe when I say that, how that is going to cause suffering, because all around impermanence happening, every moment impermanence happening, every baby born, every person dying, old age, sickness, and death, the Buddha talked about impermanence. We're not accepting it. We're not embracing it. We're not facing it. I will push away anything that reminds me of impermanence, and I will grasp for anything that helps me anesthetize my fear of death. I will grasp for what I think is happiness and push away and avoid anything I don't want to face. The Buddha called this suffering. In the US, by the way, I'm sure you all know we are conditioned to fight illness. We're going to battle it. We're going to battle illness, and we're going to hide from death, shove it out of the way, maybe over at the mortuary, but not right here. But some people break through that conditioning, and they get as close to death as possible, or as close to illness as possible. They actually want to be with people who are ill or suffering close to death so they can be of service. So some people actually do break through that. We see war destruction on TV every night, every day. You can tune in and see that. And we feel powerless and yet powerful emotions. Very powerful emotions are coming up when we see those images. It shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be that way. And so we might direct our energy into anger, blame, it's their fault, it's their fault, it's their fault, ill will, instead of look at what's arising in consciousness. How may I help? How may I be compassionate in the face of this terrible destruction? How may I help? You see, it's very hard to say, how may I help, if you can't face what's happening, or if your mind is totally wrapped up in blaming and anger. I don't know if you've ever met anyone who carries a very negative attitude. They don't like people. Have you ever heard someone say that? I don't like people. I don't like society. I'm going to go live in a cabin in the woods. I don't want to be part of it at all. Okay. So that's a big pushing away of all of this. Now, number 2, I want you to be different than you are. However you are out there, I want you to be different because I want to control all of your thoughts, okay? I want you not to make me uncomfortable. I want you to like me. In fact, love me. I want you to pay attention to me. I want to control your thoughts that I can't actually hear. I can't actually see them, but every mind is thinking. I want to control your thoughts. This is suffering. When we reach out, we want to control what people are thinking and what they do to make us happy. So again, suffering. I want the world to be different. I want the other to be different. I want to control everything. And number 3, I want me to be different than I am. I know many of you identify with that because you tell me feelings that you have about yourself. You want to be worthy. You want to live up to your potential. You want to be special. You want to stand out in the crowd. You want to be not so hard on yourself, and yet you be hard on yourself. So these are the words of people or someone who wants to become something they think they are not already. And the mystics tell us you are already whole. You're already there. You are complete the way you are. You have joy and compassion at your fingertips, but somehow we block that flow with continuing stories of I want this and I want that. So wanting things to be different than they are leads to suffering. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't go out and serve. Like, I want things to be different than they are, and that means I'm going to help. Okay, I'm going to help. And that might mean that I'm staying home meditating and I'm radiating kindness over the entire world. Or it may mean that I'm going to contribute to Doctors Without Borders, or I'm going to have conversations with people that will help uplift the energy, whatever it happens to be. Seeing what's happening and helping, finding a way to help. If we push it away, I don't think we have much chance of really helping the situation. These stories, pushing away, avoidance, they can occupy your whole life. And constant resistance to what is arising in consciousness burns your energy. Have you ever noticed that? Just burns your energy, worry, ill will, doubt, desire, a whole lifetime stuck in stories of separation. Can you see the stories that arise and not believe in them? They are arising in consciousness until they don't. Arising and going. Then there's no problem. They just arise and go. We don't have to identify with them or believe in them. So what do I mean by face and embrace? In the world arising in consciousness, we see human beings killing other human beings. Some of us don't want to accept that that's even possible. Human beings killing other human beings. But human beings, as we see arising in consciousness, are capable of violent ill will. If I can face this, then there is a chance I can open my heart. If I can't face it, I'm going to close the heart. I can't face this. I'm leaving. I'll go live in the woods alone. If I can face this, that human beings are capable of such actions, I can open my heart to the suffering that appears in the world because of this. And we often think that the heart can't take it. I just can't take it, Mary Song. I can't take any more suffering. Yet in my experience, I found that the heart can take it. Now, it's true some folks do need more stability. They may need to work with a therapist or have, a support team to feel more stable. But generally speaking, the heart is boundless. And the heart, when open, can be open to the suffering of the world. Doesn't mean I'm angry and blaming. It means I'm opening to the suffering of the world. The alternative is that the heart stays stuck and vital energy is burned, keeping the door closed. The door closed. When the heart is open, you can radiate kindness over the entire world. And this is something that, Ruth really drilled into our minds. Radiate kindness over the entire world, heading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outward and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will. Freed from hatred and ill will. A beautiful contemplation. And with that, I'm going to call on Bev to give us another prayer This will be the Buddhist prayer, I believe, Bev. Is that right? So let's just have a listen to Bev on this.
And some of you may recognize this prayer. May all beings be free from suffering. May all beings be free from the causes of suffering. May the precious and sublime awakened mind arise in those where it has not yet arisen. Where it has arisen, may it never fade, but continue to increase forevermore. May each heart be touched with loving kindness and know peace. May all be well.
Beautiful. May each heart be touched with loving kindness, no matter what side they are on, no matter what thoughts or actions they've done. Every heart touched with loving kindness. Now, I want to read a poem from Hafiz, attributed to Hafiz, 14th century Persian poet. And as soon as I finish the poem, which ends with "might be contagious," I have 4 readers who are lined up. These are very short readings, like 1 minute apiece. The order is Nirja, Ika, Jude, and Bev. If you can just open your microphones, we'll flow from one to the other without stopping in the middle. Okay, just moving from one voice to the next. So first the poem, and then Nirja picks it up. Hafiz says, I sometimes forget that I was created for joy. My mind is too busy. My heart is too heavy for me to remember that I have been called to the dance, the sacred dance of life. I was created to smile, to love, to be lifted up, and to lift others up. O sacred one, untangle my feet from all that ensnares. Free my soul, that we might dance, and that our dancing might be contagious.
I sometimes forget that I was created for joy, not my joy, but to create joy all around me. Sometimes I forget that I am joy, that joy is my true essence. And when I remember and live in that joy, it is contagious. O sacred one, the one from which joy flows, thank you for helping me remember. I sometimes remember what it was like before I knew joy. And even in the midst of that memory, I am still joy, spreading wide.
I sometimes forget that I was empty, peacefully so, taking in the entire world because there was so much room where I was. Sometimes I forget that I am empty, refreshingly so. O sacred one, take up your place once again where my fullness had been. I sometimes remember to drop my infatuations and pray, which is simply a remembering.
I sometimes forget that I was born perfect, as was everyone else. Sometimes I forget that all is just as it is, and that all is well, since this is the only moment we have. O sacred one, let me remember. Let me dance in a bliss of joy and have you join me. I sometimes remember that I once knew this.
I sometimes forget that I was meant to be happy, to dance and sing and rejoice with others. Sometimes I forget what it means to be happy. I get bogged down with judgments and worries and expectations and anger. O sacred one, quell the mind thoughts. Be present to each beautiful moment. Be present to now and now and now. I sometimes remember to be quiet, to listen to the stillness, to listen to silence. Surely, silence speaks what one needs to hear.
So beautiful. Thank you, everyone. This is something that we do in the writing workshops where I'll present a poem and then I'll give them, I think they had 2 minutes on this one to write using Hafiz's intro line. And sometimes I interrupt and have them start again and again. So this is the result. Very beautiful and profound voices coming through here. And in just a little bit, we'll have another 4 to hear from. But I wanted to continue on with this topic. In January of 2014, Joel asked me to teach. Now, I took this as a very big moment in my life. I was being asked to step forward and continue the tradition of spiritual giving, is the way I'm thinking about this. But here's the thing, I did not say yes. Why not? It took me 6 years to say yes. Why is that? Because I recognized I was not facing some things in my psyche. I knew they were there. I mean, it wasn't hidden from me. I knew that was in there. I'm pointing up here like my psyche is a real solid object that's up here, but that's just imaginary. These things I knew were here, and I thought I can't step forward as a spiritual teacher as long as I'm carrying this with me. And so it took 6 years to deal with that. No one ever really asked me what it was and what were you holding on to. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit this morning. And what I did, I went back through 6 years of my date books where I record everything that I do. I've been doing that for many years. I went through and I looked to see, well, what did happen? What was going on in 6 years that it took me to clear the stuff I knew was there? And so here's something I realized. There were 2 major senior wise women in my life. One was Ruth Denison, my Buddhist Vipassana teacher. And I could not imagine the world without her. And she was aging. Her memory was getting really bad. And I couldn't imagine going on without her in life. The other was my mother, a very powerful influence on my life. I couldn't face, the thought my mother's going to die. I can't face it. I can't face it. I don't want to. Don't make me do it. Right? She's getting older and older. They were roughly the same age, by the way. My mother lived to 93, and I think Ruth was 90. So my mind, when I contemplate this, because I was constantly flying to Iowa to be with my mother like 5 or 6 times a year, I've kept going and wrapping my life around her. I, in my mind, would run away from the idea when it finally comes, then. But here's the interesting thing about that fear that I had. When the time came, Ruth died first, and then my mother died during that 6 years. During that time, they both died. And what happened? My world did not fall apart. In fact, when it happened for each of them, my energy just moved with what was happening in life. This is what's happening. And I presented myself then as this loving energy. It was all about love. And life put me there with an open heart. And I faced and embraced this impermanence that I didn't want to have. And so all of that worry, all of that fear I had for years that held me back from teaching and so on was wasted energy. It was wasted. I had to learn this though. And so I did learn it. I can face those types of things, and I can do it with love in my heart and an open heart. But here's another one. Here's another thing I had to face. Old age, sickness, and death, right? What the Buddha likes to talk so much about, how we push that away, old age, sickness, and death. I had to face the fact that I had an illness. I was diagnosed in 2006, and I didn't tell anyone, except Nirja, of course. She had to go to the doctors with me. But I didn't tell my family. I didn't tell my friends, or if they did know, I made light of it. Oh, just minor thing. But actually it wasn't minor, and it was very debilitating. And so I tried everything, all kinds of alternatives, and I finally had to give into modern medicine and take very powerful pharmaceuticals in order to stay mobile. But I withheld this from people. That's the main point I want to make here. I was holding that back. Yeah. Because why? I wanted to control what you thought of me, I think. I didn't want you to think, oh, she's sick, or she's impaired, or, she's weak. It was very silly of me, because all of us, old age, sickness, and death is all of us, right? We're born, we die. In between, we age. We live long enough, it's old age. Sickness comes all throughout life. All throughout life. So I was still, trying to control what you thought of me. I finally came out of the closet about the illness and about lots of other things, because when you pop that cork, coming out of the closet, you pop the cork, everything comes pouring out that you've been holding up in there. You've been storing up, holding back from people because you're afraid of what they're going to think of you. So those things had to be faced before I could say yes to Joel's request. Now, there's one more thing I want to add. There were lots of things that happened in the 6 years. Lots. My beloved cat died, and I fell into deep grief over my cat. Gosh, the best cat in the entire world. But this one I think is very important. In 2014, while visiting my mother in Iowa, a great big old house, actually had 12 rooms, upper and lower, and she was lower and I was on the upper floor. While visiting, and some of you have heard me talk about this before, someone broke into the house. It was not a nice neighborhood. In fact, you might hear a gunshot or two. You think, oh, Iowa's peaceful. No. Lots of drug dealing going on and so on. Even found a bullet hole in the side of the house one time. But anyway, someone broke into the house while we were asleep. I was upstairs. She was downstairs. The thief ransacked the lower level of the house, pulled out drawers and the couch cushions, and it was kind of bizarre. And then somehow went into my mother's bedroom while she was sleeping there and took the money out of her purse. How could this happen? I was so enraged the next morning. We all got up and realized, we've been robbed. We've been robbed. The police came, right? I didn't see them take any fingerprints or, any taping off of areas or anything. It was just another robbery in a bad neighborhood. But I was so enraged that someone would violate our territory and take my mother's money that I saw an energy rise up in me I hadn't ever seen before. And it was ill will to the max. I want to find that thief. I had visions of going up and down the alley all through the neighborhood with a baseball bat. Who did it? Who did it? I wanted to be violent. That's, I never thought I could have that in my nature. And I saw myself just filled with anger, and I wanted retribution. I didn't attack anyone. I couldn't find anyone to attack, but I did resort to my Buddhist practices and meditated, and also to my creative practice. And I wanted to read to you a brief letter that I wrote. It's part of a memoir that I wrote about my life. And so I wrote a letter to the thief. Of course, this is never mailed to the thief. The thief actually was arrested and sent to prison, which is a good thing, because this was a violent person who did this. So this is called Letter to the Thief Whom I Hate, but Somehow Love. Thank you, thief. Thank you, thief, for not killing my mother, for not making so much noise that I came down looking. Thank you for not taking Mom's prescription pills, some really good ones that were clustered all over the kitchen table, and for not finding the lockbox under the bed. Thanks for leaving my mother's black purse after you ransacked the house and took the money out of the purse. And thanks for not letting the cat outside on your way out. Thanks for robbing us of our false sense of security. Why did we ever think we were safe from you? It was all a delusion that you deflated for us. Thanks for dynamiting my false sense of the way things are. I couldn't have done it without you. You sent my mother to the nursing home, still fearing that she'd wake up in the night with you inches from her face. And me, I don't know who I am anymore. This is a good thing, even though it sounds bad. Thanks for robbing me of my false mission to protect and save my mother. I could not do it, and I see that now. Bev, it's a good time for you to do the third prayer.
This is from Meredith Heller with a few added lines of my own. I sing because it is my way of placing a prayer in the open palm of the goddess. My song is an armful of wildflowers gathered at sunrise and placed on her altar like a million tongues, chanting their harmonies to the universe, calling out the names of every being, everywhere, to come home, home to the heart, home to peace, home to the holy presence within.
Thank you for that. Beautiful. Now, I want to read a poem by Mark Nepo called The Exquisite Risk. And right after that, his poem begins with My Soul Tells Me. And the readers you will hear also have My Soul Tells Me. And it begins with Sweet Bird, then goes to Heart Song, Laura, and Wesley, those four. So have your microphones open. And Laura, you can come forward to the microphone. Great. So this is Mark Nepo, if you want to look up this poem, The Exquisite Risk. He says, my soul tells me we are all broken from the same nameless heart, and every living thing wakes with a piece of that original heart aching its way into blossom. This is why we know each other below our strangeness, why when we fall, we lift each other, or when in pain, we hold each other. When sudden with joy, we dance together. Life is the many pieces of that great heart, loving itself back together.
My soul tells me to walk among the old ones, the loving silvery branches of the gigantic cedar by the river. My soul tells me she is a deep lover, me and the rushing water behind her. She quivers as I approach and put my arm over her bark. My soul tells me I am not alone when I feel so immensely for this stunning sentinel, guardian of the sacred waters and lands, whispering among the sweeping flat needles, shaking down the clear feathering winds of joy.
My soul tells me to be open to all things, allow all things, to accept myself. My soul tells me that she or it lives into all, body, environment, friends, fills each and everything. My soul tells me never to despair, to find appreciation for what is, that judging is play, unreal, and that whatever is, is.
My soul tells me that this is my precious life, and being of service will bring joy into this being. My soul tells me, don't make judgments on your behavior, trust. My soul tells me that my heart is grateful for Mary Song's prompts, even though my little self does not always relish the territory. Yes, to selfless love, trust, and acceptance. Yes.
My soul tells me that I am and I am not. I am light and space. I'm not separate. My soul tells me that all I need do is to open to all that is now, that is truly now. My soul tells me that all will be well in the end. I am all that is now and here. I am you and they and those.
Thank you. That was so lovely. This is something that we like to do in the writing workshop. Whatever is written in that time frame is just perfect. Seems to be kind of magical from my point of view. So the Buddha, I wonder, in your lifetime, were there things, metaphorically speaking, that you stashed away, not ready to face, and then later in life, you found, I can now. My heart's open now. I can take this in. Does anybody have an example of that? I'd love to hear from someone else, not just me, but other people's experiences. Pushing away just was too uncomfortable. Push it away. And then later on, you were able to open your heart and let it in.
I think it was 1972 when I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And I remember that I didn't want anybody to know about it because they would think I was crazy, which I was, but I didn't want anybody to know it. And I remember even I would take the labels off my medicine bottles and destroy them so nobody could read what I was taking, which was lithium carbonate. Works very well, by the way. But then years later, I think in satsang, I found that it was more helpful, more honest to just talk about what actually is rather than trying to cover things up, even some personal things. You want to be, exposing yourself, but discreetly and properly. And then I came to the point where it doesn't make any difference to me anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I mean, when it's accepted by you, and as you use the word exposed, then it's almost like, oh, it's just another thing. It's like the weather, it's a rainy day today, or it's a sunny day today. I have an illness. I do this and that for it. But I understand what you mean. Like you had this, you thought people would think of you differently, and you didn't want that, right? You wanted to actually control what they thought, which I did too. I didn't want people to think she's infirm. This is bad for her, something along that line. But, when we do that, we're really pronouncing the separation from the whole. I am this separate individual in my little nutshell. I'm the little worm inside the nut, and I'm hiding in here. Don't look at me. Don't know the truth about my physical being, or whatever the case. And we're separated then. We're believing in that story of I that keeps us separated. Who else can speak up? Give another example of this, Yeah, Heart Song, go ahead.
I don't know where I got the idea, but all the way through my life, I've lied about everything. I mean, I never could give somebody a straight answer about anything. If you asked me anything, I'd make up some kind of story to give you an answer. And then when I got into business, I was a property manager and I was still doing the same kind of thing. But a woman came to work for me who was a Jehovah's Witness. And she was as honest as the day is long. I mean, she was just so honest. And she'd deal with these situations that I'd lie about with just direct honesty. And nothing happened. No horrible thing happened. The world didn't fall apart. And I thought, well, maybe I can try that too. And that was kind of the beginning of my becoming a very honest person. And it was the same thing, you know, hiding myself in a nut, being the worm in the nut.
Yeah. Coming out of hiding. What led you to the lying part, though? What was it that made you feel like you had to do that, apparently?
Well, I think it was from being young. It was from my father, who was very confrontive and hostile toward anything I had to say. And so I just said this thing that would keep me safe. That's where I learned it.
Yeah, often when we investigate, we find out that we're trying to stay safe and comfortable, and we think this is what we need to do. And unfortunately, it sucks so much energy with it, you know, sucks that life force down into this separation business, where lives many afflictions of the mind. And when we know this, when we recognize this, oh, the compassion we can feel for others, first ourselves. Yes, I did this. I withheld that illness information because I was afraid what you'd think of. I understand that. I see this. And compassion then for others. We see this with others happening as well. We're all one somehow. Somebody else have an example you'd like to share with us? Time when Ika, I was hoping you'd speak up.
I wonder if this is responding to the question, but recently I realized that I have a creative need. And I think all my life, because I didn't grow up in a family of artists or, in fact, you know, a family of workers. So just realizing how much energy I had spent trying to live my daily life as someone who's, I don't know, more Puritan than I actually am. And now, like, trying to seek ways to sort of just respond to my needs, and also maybe accepting the consequences, currently imaginary, because, you know, I have in mind that if I don't work, then I'm just going to be homeless.
Actually, that's a good example because you're looking at your conditioning. You grew up in this family, in this culture, and you felt Puritan, right? So the choices you were making in life were in alignment with that. And now you're discovering, well, I'm actually hiding my need for a creative life. I want a creative life. And maybe some people will reject you for that. That it's true. I mean, you know, Wesley, somebody might have heard that and say, oh, Wesley, or Mary Song, weakling. Or Ika, she should stick with what her family did. You know, people will think those things.
Yeah.
Pardon? Unreliable?
Yeah, unreliable, or somehow, you know, when you're creative, then you're not to be
reliable,
trusted or something.
Nirja, where are you? Artists are so unreliable. She's a full-time artist. But yeah, that creative energy pulled back and hidden. I mean, when you think of it, I think of that with sorrow, how many people could live a lifetime that way of the creative energy, which is natural creative energy. This is all arising in consciousness as creativity, and we are it too. And when that's held back in, oh, the stories of separation, not good enough, right, Ika? Not good enough, not doing the right thing in life. Oh, And we can be pretty severe with ourselves. Would you find that to be true, Ika?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah. And I think no wonder I feel exhausted all the time. I'm not living my life.
We exhaust ourselves with this hiding business. I had to come out completely in order to be a spiritual teacher, because otherwise you might find out stuff about me and then I'd, be shamed. Or I had to really come out with it. Sexuality, sexual preference, illness, everything, come right out with it. And yes, some people will judge you. And you have to be careful. You have to be discreet. You could be someplace where they stone to death people who are, say, they're homosexual or whatever the case. But the liberation you feel when you face it, you embrace it, and you give it to the world as a gift. The energy that moves through you. It's not something that you make. It's not something that you create or calculate. It's there and it moves through you. Joy, compassion. In that heart area, though, we can cut it off and feel such inertia with that. So Doug says, we taste the profundity of existence by simultaneously holding both the suffering and, I missed it, the suffering and the wonder of being alive. So we taste the suffering. It's our own suffering and it's your suffering. It's the world's suffering. We let that in. We bless it with loving compassion. Todd often would talk about, cradling your affliction. Just wants to be loved, just brought back into the whole. And for me, when something arises like an affliction, say jealousy. Well, Andrea got more people on her screen than I got, but it's silly. I mean, it's Mary's song, so silly. And it arises and it's gone. So, but if I held back, don't let anybody know that I ever have any pangs of jealousy. Hold it here and hide out. Oh, shh, and it's gone. That's freedom. That's liberation. You still feel deeply grief. I dived or dove into the grief of my two strong, wise women. I grieved for months, sweetly, deeply. I wouldn't want it any other way. Barbara, hi.
Hi. I have an experience, I've had this experience more than once where, for me, let me speak to the one. It was about 7 years ago, 5 years ago. I had an experience with a person, a friend who was my administrator where I lived. And we became good friends, I thought, but it somehow, the friendship was incomplete. And she always kind of talked over me and around me and through me, but I never ended up really talking with her. She thought at all that time that we were becoming more and more friends and had a strong friendship. And I didn't know how to, I loved her, but I didn't know how to explain that I was invisible as well to her. She didn't know it. She thought I was visible. I was invisible. So I would walk away from each interaction the same way. It really rarely changed. Then she moved into another situation completely, another job. And and in her going, she wanted to find me to say goodbye, and I ran away from her. Every time I saw her somewhere looking for me, I would run or hide. And I was, I had almost too much to say. And so time went on and years went by, and she physically floated in and out of my life briefly, and she would give me a warm hello, and I would give her a warm hello, and that would be it, and I would turn away and leave. And then recently, very recently, about 3 weeks ago, I don't know, have a reason why. I just know that I could do it. I could talk to her, and I wrote her a letter, and I gave her as much as I could of myself that I felt comfortable with, but I still didn't recognize with her what was really going on, although it was implied in what I said and implied in what I did. But I came out of that feeling extremely whole as a person, because I realized that I had been beating myself up for not being able to face her,
Yes.
5 years ago or 7 years ago or 3 years ago. And it burdened me. But I realized after it was over, I was very glad it all had happened exactly the way it did, because I could see that I couldn't do it. I didn't do it. There must have been, for myself, a very good, not even a judgment. It's not like I had a good reason. It's that it was the way it needed to be. And then when I finally did say what I said, I still felt even more validated in myself that there are things that I don't know, that I can't know, and that I need to just trust, just because the rest of the world told me that I should do it differently. And she told me I should do it. Everyone told me I should do it differently. I could not, I judged myself. I didn't do it, but also I felt uneasy about not doing it. This is just one occurrence, I think, for me. This has been many times in my life, but I think things have a beauty, have a purpose of their own that you can't know. And I would never have known that if I hadn't allowed all this to happen just the way it did.
That's a beautiful story, and I love the way it comes full circle. And you're able to see how you were moved through life. Life was moving through you. And at that one point, you felt unsafe to tell her what you were really thinking. You felt unsafe. And so you didn't say anything. You waited. And when the time was right, life moved you into position, and you were able to free yourself and free her too. Part of you, I think, knew that you couldn't change her. So you could try to convince her, hey, you don't listen to me. You're always talking about yourself. You don't listen to me. Part of you knew you couldn't change that behavior in her, which I think is wise, very wise. We often want to. It's like, I'm going to sit down here and I'm going to tell you what I think, and I'm going to change you. Really, we can only change in here. But we think we can change the other. I want them to be different than they are. But you waited until life moved you, the right time came, which is great, because not everyone gets that. They pass away too soon, maybe on their deathbed with regrets. I wish I'd said that when I could. So it's a lovely story. Thank you, Barbara. Beautiful. I feel a lot of peace and love with all of you. Let's do a little synchronized bow to bring it to a close, and just notice that these hands are slowly coming together. As sometimes we want to race ahead and just get the whole thing over with. just so slowly coming together. Then we can notice that the mind is touching the body, where that space we call hands, where that is. Slowly coming together. And then the fingertips touch. And finally, the palms come together. One flat surface. Now they're one unit, looks like. It's one thing. one all one, here and now. May you all have a beautiful rest of the day. May we radiate kindness over the entire world and open our hearts to love and compassion. Thank you.